It is your post-match reaction. Sorry for the delay there. Things all whirling around on my laptop. But we are back with a post-match reaction. That does feel good to say. After 3 months without football, Everton were back at Goodison Park today. They played Liverpool in the Merseyside derby and they drew 0-0. Mark Mosey and Rob Vera here to have a chat about it with me. But first things first, lads. Carlo Ancelotti, to talk about a lockdown glow-up. That fella looks $1 million, doesn't he? Absolutely. Really good suit, slim, full of energy. I mean, those walks down Crosby Beach are certainly benefiting him, aren't they?
Absolutely. I think the lanyard makes it. It says, I'm stylish, but I can also get you into restricted areas. And I think it's that type of suave nature, which is the reason why we binned Duncan Ferguson off and went for him. Nothing to do with any form of managerial prestige, just for the sheer, sharp, chiseled jawline on the touchline.
Carlo Ancelotti looked exactly like the man that a teenage version of me would have gladly set up his recently divorced mom with. He is everything cool about cool. And he walked in without the tie on and that suit. It was so like, hey, don't worry, I'm Carlo Ancelotti, and I'm not even gonna try like an accent or anything. It is so the vibe that he brings to an atmosphere like that, and he looked great. But I would say also that there was just something about his sort of relaxed nature that you wonder if it's beginning to kind of permeate through the team a little bit. And we'll go on to talk about it. But for all the poor all the poor things we can talk about going forward, it seems like having Carlo Ancelotti plus maybe no Goodison crowd took a lot of the weight off their shoulders today.
Well, I was going to bring up, what it was like watching, but we're on Carlo Ancelotti here, and I think it's probably a good place to start, because I think the thing coming out of that, Mose, when no real Seamus Coleman was Everton's standout performer on the day, so he's an 8 out of 10, but apart from that, no one really got to that level. Everyone just did pretty well. So I think as a unit and collectively, Everton looked like they were comfortable in what they were doing, they were well coached, and I think the other thing I thought was really impressive was that there was never a spell in the game where Liverpool really got on top of Everton. Whether a midfielder won a foul, we cleared it down the line properly and got our shape back. And I think those sorts of things, when you're playing a team like that, who are relentless and can smother you, just having those little breaks, just having those little outlets are really important. And it felt as though it's probably the most I've seen an Everton team in Carlo Ancelotti's image. We just looked like a canny football team out there today at times.
Yeah, I think it was the perfect setup against a post-lockdown Liverpool. I think if we were to go back 3 months and play in the same ilk, we'd have probably brought ourselves a lot more problems on. But as you said, as limited as we were going forward, you felt that the whole game plan, there was an acceptance today that we were going to probably not have a great deal of the ball. And to an extent, even when we did have the ball, it wasn't overly important what we did with it to a degree, because when you do set up in the way that we did, relatively rigid, and obviously with the front two that we've got, we know what we are sacrificing in terms of a bit of a clinical edge at times, but the workmanship is what you buy into when you play against teams like Liverpool today. I think the main concern from me coming out of the game is the fact that I'd forgotten just how big a problem the midfield was for Everton. And I think you could arguably say that of the top 5 poorest performers on our side, 4 of them would have been our midfield. And that is something that you rarely get away with against any Premier League side, and even more rare against one of the quality of Liverpool. So as much as I wouldn't say that we got away with it today, because clearly we had some good chances towards the end and arguably caused bigger problems than Liverpool caused us, I think it's something that not only needs work in the next few weeks, obviously, but something that Ancelotti will have had his eye on with regards to the transfer window for quite a while now.
For me, I come back to exactly what Mark said about the midfield. Throughout the match, I guess the the most I can say about them today is that for the most part, and we'll get on to Tom Davis, who I thought was our worst performer today, but for the most part, the midfield didn't make the huge mistake. And you kind of expected with how rusty they were going forward that would inevitably lead to, some big chances that just, overall didn't materialize so much, which I think probably covered their sins a little bit. But whether it was, and I think you can kind of this is kind of a both things can be true at the same time sort of scenario where the 11 that Ancelotti picked today is exactly what I would have picked, especially with the 4 forwards. I didn't want Sigurdsson in there. I feel like Iwobi's 24 years old and he's got better skill and pace than any of your other options, which probably says more about our options on the wings than it does anything else. But I'd rather play a young player that we've invested money in that has a chance to play going forward versus just playing something uninspiring completely. And then, of course, Anthony Gordon starting. I would rather see Anthony Gordon have a game like this where nothing quite comes off, but he's got now 70-something more minutes or 65 more minutes of Premier League experience that is crucial to his development. So I don't think they were net negatives. But to Mark's point, just going forward, they offered really nothing today. The front two, outside of Richarlison having a surge late, didn't do a whole lot either. But the midfield, you do forget how bad it is, and then you're reminded, and you don't know how you even got to 0-0, which I think because of how bad the midfield was, I can probably accept this scoreline a little bit more. But it also, to Mark's point, shows just how much work there is to do.
Well, I think in the same breath, Rob, Everton had by far probably the best 5 chances in the football match. There wasn't. Jordan Pickford doesn't have to make a save until the last minute of the game when that Fabinho free kick goes over the bar. And it's quite a routine save at that. Firmino dragged one wide. But apart from that, you're struggling to think of any moments where Liverpool card was open to a point, but then they didn't really make the right decision in the final third, coupled with some good defending. But Everton had 3 or 4 clear-cut openings to win that football match. And I think when a lot of the talks about Robertson being out and Salah being out, etc., etc. But when you put it into context, this is a team that only 2 teams this season have taken points off in the entire Premier League campaign. So I don't know. I think you might be being a bit harsh on the forward lads there. I think they were always going to have to feed off scraps, and certainly the front. I think the front two in particular would have been really easy for them on an hour to become disinterested in that game and just have their heads go down and just get a little bit too deep and stop being fully committed. But the fact that Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison grew into the game despite toiling for long spells, I think is a testament to those lads and the work ethic and the quality.
Well, sure. And I would rate the forward play above the midfield play. And I think you do bring up a good point that I think more of my critique is about their ability to be effectual at all moving forward or going forward with the ball. I think to your point, though, I think they did manage to kind of scrape out some chances. They closer to the end when we got a little bit more momentum and we looked more likely to potentially get a chance. But I would also say that the effort was clearly there, and I can't really fault them for that. There wasn't a player that you looked at today and said he's really dogging it out there or anything like that. But just the inability at times to really have any kind of net positive of aspect or effect on the game from an attacking standpoint. I just think that's trying to survive on very, very little food or very little bread and water in a scenario like that. And I don't think it's sustainable going forward. But to what Mark said earlier, again, after this delay against this Liverpool side at this stage of the restart, this is probably, the best possible scenario we could have played this poorly in midfield going forward or poorly attacking wise in some ways, at least for bigger chunks of the game until the end, and actually still gotten away with a result like this.
Well, I think at half time, Mark, you texted me saying that's about as good as you can hope for against a lockdown Liverpool there, really, in regards to Everton stifling them. And that was always how it was going to be today, wasn't it? I think Everton were never going to have 5-10 minutes where they pin Liverpool back in and create a chance after chance, and they were defending those. It was always going to have to be playing moments. And I think for the first 10 minutes, Everton were good in those moments. For the next, 60, 70 minutes of the match, they weren't very good in those moments. And then for the last 10, 15, they were clinical and better and took a lot more care of the ball in those positions.
Yeah, it was a stale first 45. I thought it was very much the probably the best example since the restart that we've had of football teams really just allowing each other to grow into the game. And I think we probably needed that a little bit more than Liverpool, just to be able to put up with the potential attacking threat that we'd had. Granted, if Mo Salah's on the pitch, I think it all gets a hell of a lot more difficult for us. But I think the thing that, as much as we'll allow lockdown to be part of the reason for this, and as much as Rob talks about the midfield's ability to progress going forward, in a game like today, I don't necessarily always need that. I don't always need Andre Gomes to be connecting consistently with Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison, because to a degree, it's a little bit unrealistic. But I think what you do expect is just a mature, composed element of ball retention. And that's the thing that I really struggle with Everton, in that today was probably the best example for me of needing the player that Everton don't have. The closest we've ever got to this particular player is a tedious link with Abdoulaye Doucouré at the end of a transfer window. And it's someone who, yes, is capable of breaking forward 20 or 30 yards with the ball, but it's also someone who intercepts a pass 40 yards out from your own goal, and you don't get that lump in your throat about what happens next. Yeah. And I think all of our midfielders were a little bit guilty of that today. Andre Gomes looks like someone who is still trying to get up to the speed of actual Premier League football, which for so many reasons is understandable. But I think that's something that will hopefully come in time. It's something that you imagine that Ancelotti is going to infuse into this side. As much as we talk about the structure and the rigidity of the setup of his sides, he doesn't strike me as someone who is always happy to allow the opposition to have the ball. There needs to be some form of control from our side about what happens in the game. And yes, this all comes with the caveat of being up against a team who are probably going to go on and achieve 100 points this season. But if we're going to look at ourselves, and I think it's important that we do that today, that is something that we really need to work on quite quickly.
Yeah, I think that is fair enough. But, I think in the same breath, I do want us to try and focus on some positives. There were positive aspects to take from this game today. Because let's be honest.
Absolutely.
On the shows this week, in the build-up today, in our WhatsApp, everyone thought Everton were going to get a good hiding today by a few goals. And, Merseyside derbies at Goodison in particular, I never really liked that. Everton always dig in, but it's a different sort of a Merseyside derby. A few standout individual performances, Rob. Seamus Coleman, man of the match on the broadcast over here on Sky. And I think from, he gets a lot of stick, Seamus, and, I think at times we've been critical of him, and rightly so. His form has been a bit up and down. Bit of stick as a captain, his rallying cries and stuff like that. But I think, in fairness to him today, he set the tone in his battle with Mane from minute one. The ball goes over to that left-hand side early on. He wins the battle, he puts Mane on his backside, and he deals with him really well. Apart from one moment at the end of the first half where Mane knocks it between his legs and gets around the other side of him. But apart from that, he just stuck to him like glue for the entire game and was excellent against one of the best footballers on the planet at the moment.
100%. And I would even go as far to say, especially as someone who has been consistently and openly critical of Seamus Coleman's output for the last couple of seasons, this was today, I think, what a lot of us at least conceive of in our heads when we hear the word captain, right? I thought that for all of the lack of execution, offensively at the critical moment today, I thought that the defensive effort, and really you can go across that entire back four. Luka Dean struggled a bit going forward in the first half with some bad passes here and there. But I always thought that defensively we were pretty solid, especially given who we were going against. To Mark's point, we certainly were lucky to dodge Mo Salah in a game like this. But I really didn't have any complaints about any of the back four. But Seamus Coleman, he was riding that edge. He had the yellow. At times I thought in the second half, because I think I sometimes, hear his voice and how shrill it can be when he's yelling. And I think that he's going to get that second yellow, but he managed to ride that wave and not do it. And really as a caveat to that, I think I picked up more on that even more on that than normal today. I watched the broadcast without the artificial crowd noise, and I think that made a difference in terms of how I can interpret some of the way that the players were actually feeling. And it's just so fascinating to take that crowd away from it. But Coleman's consistent communication and just his overall output, his energy, played really solid defensively, didn't make the big mistake. I mean, these were, I thought, there were at least a couple times I can remember that Mike Dean was being Mike Dean, and I think Coleman was denied some tackles there. But overall, definitely man of the match today, and that is hard to say as someone who rates Seamus Coleman as poorly as I generally do.
Rob, coming from someone who watched the game with the artificial crowd noise, I'll tell you that the Goodison crowd were exceptionally polite today. There was some rather tentative boos of displeasure when Mike Dean blew up some free kicks around the box, but generally quite a polite atmosphere, which I think was in a good spirit of the game. Not overly sure we'll see it in future derbies, but yeah, I think everything you said about Coleman is spot on. I think the challenge for him as an individual now is to prove that we as Everton fans, we know that he is capable of that performance twice a season. We know we've seen it when he's come back from injuries or in big games like today. We know he is capable of rallying not only himself but everyone around him. And I think what we have longed for the past 3 or 4 seasons from him is some form of consistency. Show us that you are capable of just 6 or 7 out of 10s weekend after weekend. And I think that is something that he, with age, is now struggling with, to the point where we do question his position in the side. But yeah, today he was excellent. I think someone else, I know you mentioned all of the back four, Rob, but I thought that Mason Holgate in particular was someone who I felt as an Evertonian assured with myself when he had the ball. And I haven't had that many times as an Evertonian with any players. But he is so comfortable organising his defence, so comfortable speaking to everyone around him. And I think most impressively, so capable of taking the ball off Jordan Pickford or anyone else around his own 18-yard box and not losing it. And I think that is something that not only that, but he's got that awareness as a Premier League defender should have to know when that is an acceptable ploy and when it's going to his head. I think there was a couple of times today where we managed to work ourselves into trouble. In particular, one incident in the first half that Michael Keane had a shot at Tom Davis, and all of a sudden we were on our own penalty spot. And Mason Holgate, you mentioned captain in Seamus Coleman's name, but Mason Holgate is someone who is equally capable of being that guy that we need. And I think he is playing well above his years at the moment.
Yeah, he was the leader in the back four today, wasn't he, Rob? He's the leader in the centre-back partnership. Keane is very much the senior player, but Holgate's been the one who's been the mainstay of that back four for a few months now. And when that pair needed a bit of leadership, a bit of guidance, he was the one to take the ball off Pickford very deep and look to play out. Which is probably harder to do against Liverpool than any other team in world football, given the way they press. He just looks like a lad who's ready to take on responsibility in any situation.
Mason Holgate was fantastic, and we've all been impressed in this 3-year-long current season that we're in, just how much Mason Holgate's story has developed. I mean, it has really been just, if you really consider where we thought we were with this position at the end of the summer, to see Mason Holgate show us all of this, and yet you still get the sense that there may be another level to his game, and we're seeing him grow right before our eyes. But he's comfortable on the ball. I think that you're absolutely right about Michael Keane, who, look, I don't really rate Michael Keane. I don't think he's long for this world at the club overall, but I thought he was solid today in his role. And his role, to your point, is being that deferential partner to a more established or more forceful leader on the other side of him. And I thought that Mason Holgate handled that role well today. A lot of the case that I generally make for Yerry Mina over Michael Keane, beyond just thinking he's a lot better than Michael Keane, is that he's really comfortable on the ball. And I think that if that partnership, or if we bring in someone like a Gabriel, or if any of these other wild rumors are true about Thiago Silva, I mean, then you're having a different discussion. But Mason Holgate has established himself as as one of the core foundational pieces of this thing going forward. And it's really exciting. And of course, this is just the first game of the restart, but there's nothing that we saw today that suggests that our eyes have been deceiving us up to this point.
We got a message off Foxy on Hot Mic. If you watch us on Hot Mic, let us know who you thought was man of the match, what you thought of the game overall. Just get in touch with us, tell us what you thought of the game. Foxy said, I thought we played well, almost a classic Carlo performance. Really can't fault them much. We knew our weaknesses and compensated for them. I think that's a great point, actually, Mark, in regards to that. You know, we all knew where Everton were going to be poor today. We all knew the midfield was going to be a little bit weak. And there was only certain things we could do to really, compensate for that. But in the main, we seemed to adapt well to the situations in the game where Liverpool got on top of us.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that we are clearly a squad with weaknesses at the moment for so many reasons. And we are coming up, and we will come up against a lot of Premier League sides who, on the back of a 3-month rest, have got their entire arsenal behind them. We are not a squad in that category. We've got 2 goalkeepers on the bench. Everton have just about in injury time made their 3rd substitution, and you'll probably be able to count on one hand the amount of teams since the restart that have not used 5 substitutions all in one go, because they are capable of bringing those fresh legs on. And for one reason or another, Everton are not able to do that at the moment. I think the one thing that will do, as much as we would like to be able to be in a position to utilise a larger squad, you will develop a sense of unity that other squads will probably struggle for because of so much turnover with playing staff at the moment. As much as that will ultimately benefit those teams at some point and arguably later on in games, I think what Ancelotti is trying to do here is not to have this sort of scattergun approach about how we look forward to these next sort of 8 or 9 games. I think it's important that we do keep that sort of solid core of players almost, and use the opportunity that we've been given to not be able to change it up too much. Use that to breed a little bit of chemistry between the sides, because you're going to need it on days like today where your technical ability is not probably up to the standard of the opposition.
Yeah, I suppose one other thing from that, Rob, is that every team in the league at the moment has had 3 weeks training, basically to themselves. They play 2 friendly matches, but they've been very much themselves and their manager. If you put on every team in the Premier League, so it should start off at 0 at the start of that 3-week training period. Having Carlo Ancelotti working with these lads for 3 weeks without any matches, with time to get his ideas across, given the calibre of manager he is and the calibre of coach he is, that surely gives Everton an advantage over a lot of teams in this league, simply because they've got a much better manager than most teams in this league.
Oh, absolutely. It's amazing how much we've ridden the wave over the years of these managers who we always think at times, if they could just get 3 weeks alone with their team and implant their ideas and all of this stuff, that's at least been our working theory. But in the case of Carlo Ancelotti, you look at an opportunity like this to have this much kind of uninterrupted, largely focused and kind of, distraction minimal time together to just bond as a team and to just get more time with the manager, and especially a quality manager. Suddenly that feels like those are those opportunities for that incremental growth that we're always talking about, that this club needs to make. As much as we always talk about the quick fixes and the way in which transfers can influence us getting better, and they certainly do, it's going to be that internal development of players, which really must first start with the manager and the overall philosophy that he imparts upon the club as a whole, and especially these players who, as we saw today, are still a very, very young side for the problems that we identify with some of the older players, on a relatively frequent basis, like Gylfi Sigurdsson or some of the criticisms of Coleman at times. You've still got a really young squad, and you can't think of anyone you'd rather have with a group like that for 3 weeks to just impart ideas and thoughts and overall Zen Jedi magic, quite like Carlo Ancelotti.
I think as much as you expect someone like Ancelotti to come in, and your first thought is always, how does he progress the club? How do we push forward? How do we do things slightly differently in order to take us onto that level? I think you probably take for granted how nice it is to have a manager who quite simply doesn't have any obvious weaknesses. before we even go on to all of the great things he can do, you probably look back at Everton's recent managers, in particular Marco Silva and Roberto Martinez, and you can very quickly, in your own mind, figure out the reasons why we would have lost the game today under those managers, be it set pieces, be it just being generally terrible at the back. And I think what Ancelotti does, as much as there is that platform to progress in future years, he just offers that sort of base level of stability, which a club like Everton have been crying out for so long. And so I think it's important that as much as we expect so much from Ancelotti and the new Everton or wherever that may be, we needed someone just to steady the ship, and he has done that almost effortlessly. And I think that is a nod to the first signs of his brilliance before we've even seen the impact that he will really have on this side tactically.
And Mark, I believe this is three. Is this? If I think I saw a stat during the game that he's lost 3 games in 11, so now 3 in 12. I think it would still be the record. So that speaks right there to that solidity for sure.
Even as Evertonians now, we overlook statistics like that. We've got no right, given the last sort of 4 or 5 years, to overlook statistics like that, because that level of stability and consistent points on the board has been so hard for us to achieve. So I think he as much as we all appreciate that he's doing a great job, I think it's even actually a little bit better than what we are all recognising.
Let's quickly cover more points before we wrap this up. The chances at the end. I mean, I was up when Tom Davies tries to knock that ball across goal. In fairness to Joe Gomez, I didn't realise that he gets across and puts something on that, because I think Davies scores otherwise. But just take yourselves back, lads. 2 of the biggest Tom Davies fans on the Blue Room. Imagine that Tom Davies winning goal in a Merseyside derby. He'd never get stick from the Everton Dars ever again, would he?
I'd be first in line. But no, I think when
seeing it again, I thought how he missed that, but watching the replay, it is an inspiring defender, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. As much as at the point where the ball lands at his feet, you absolutely expect him to score. And to a degree, that point still stands. Occasionally, you can't account for just that slight deflection that Joe Gomez managed to get on the ball. And I do slightly put it down more to the hard luck as opposed to poor finishing. But it's the type of chance that even at the point of that dropping 7 or 8 yards out in a Merseyside derby, it's about a 10% chance of an Everton player putting it in the net. And time again, it feels like we just have to go that little bit further to score a goal against this side than anyone else does. But that is what Merseyside derbies are for Everton, unfortunately, and that is the struggle that we all live through twice a year.
And for me, Mark and I are very much of the fellowship of having realized, I would say, Mark, 2 or 3 years, probably 2 years ago, that Tom Davies had nothing. And I think it's been a while, but let me talk about today specifically. The miss by Tom Davies there, I think it is absolutely fair to point out that there was a good defensive play there, that it wouldn't have been as clear-cut a chance as some would argue. I get all of that. But I think that for those who are still kind of holding out hope for Tom Davies finally turning into something, the idea is that, today is going to be the day. This is going to be the moment. It's like his entire narrative is waiting for this moment. And I will admit, there were shades of that Man City goal. When you look at how he almost scored that, like, there were shades of that Man City goal just that flashed right before my eyes. I thought he was going to finish it. And I did think at that point, wow, if he finished, like in that moment, I was like, if he finishes this, I can't wait to talk about this, because it's going to be a way more complicated conversation about Tom Davies. But he missed it. And that's so Tom Davies. And look, it's not just that. For the few times that Mike Dean tried to Mike Dean this thing, there were also chances given away by sequences that began with Tom Davies giving away a poor ball in the midfield. For as good as the overall effort was today, and again, I've never questioned Tom Davies's endeavor in terms of his output, his effort. Once again, he was a net negative. negative. And when he had the chance, he didn't score. And again, DCL had a poor header off a corner that he probably would have buried if this had been earlier in the season. But I can't. I think this game is just another reason that when we talk about Everton having more options in midfield, even in this run-in, I feel like I know what I need to know about Tom Davies. And if you're honest with yourself, you all know exactly what you need to know about Tom Davies. I would, at this point, rather see other players get those minutes to see if they've got something at this point. Yes, I mean the Benny Beningamis of the world. Why not? I am ready to see something else, because in the last few games, this is all really about finding out what we've got for next season.
Yeah, I agree with your general overall points about Davis, but I actually thought he played all right today. I know you guys don't agree with that, but I thought it was a thankless task playing in midfield for Everton. And let's be honest as well, Andre Gomez was done on 60 minutes. He was done on 40 minutes before half time. His legs had gone. The Liverpool players were walking past him. So in terms of having energy and getting around the pitch and putting tackles in and doing all those things, it was effectively Davis on his own against 3 other lads in there for Liverpool. So it was a thankless task. And I think he did okay. I don't think he was amazing. I don't think he had a terrible game, but I think he was probably 6, 7 out of 10, all in all. And you're right, Rob. It feels at this point now where he is, it's gonna take something. It's going to take something really special for him to go on and become a first-team player for Everton, whether that be a loan where he does really well, comes back, or whatever else, or scoring the winning goal in a Merseyside derby to just send his confidence through the roof and change him into a different player. And I just wonder in a couple of years when Tom Davies is maybe playing somebody else or still struggling with Everton, we'll look back at that moment of thinking he took that away. Maybe things will look a little bit different for him in Everton's shirt, but you never know. Two more things. Go on.
When he's playing Notts County in a couple of years, you'll look back at this day and think, "Oh, do you remember when he was a Premier League footballer?" My final point on Tom Davies, by the way, lads, is that I have missed this. I have really missed all of this.
You guys are relentless. Come on, I thought good result against the Champions election. I won the game. Still going to Tom Davies. You're obsessed. I mean, that booking on Philip Dean was just probably the worst referee I've seen all season, and we've had a lot of bad ones go against us. The ball literally goes in the opposite direction, and he's 5 yards away from it.
The most startling element of that decision is just how good a position Mike Dean had managed to get himself in to make that call. I mean, as much as we talk, people in front of goal and it being harder to miss than to score, I genuinely think it was harder to make that call than it would have been to make the right decision and watch the ball go. As you say, it was so clear that I'm quite glad I had the match crowd noise on in the background, because I can only imagine the profanities that were coming from the Everton players at that point. But a crazy decision, and it seems strange that we've gone almost a decade of this guy being a top-ranking official and not being allowed to referee a local Merseyside derby. And it's suddenly become the kind of done thing for all derbies. I'm not overly sure where that's come from.
The only thing I'll add to that, to Mark's point about how utterly Mike Dean that whole thing was, in terms of the call, like to Mark's point, not only was he in a great position, but sometimes you'll see those slow motion replays where the player gets just this little piece that barely deflects the ball, right? We've all seen that. I swear to God, this ball, shot off at a 45-degree angle, and I don't know how he could have missed that or what he thought actually moved the ball in the direction that it moved, besides Luka Dean's foot. But I just thought that's the thing, is it ended up 0-0 today, but you all have to admit you thought that was going to be the moment that probably cost us this game. I mean, that's so us. But it's also so the Premier League, and I will be shouting this from the rooftops forever. But there is no effective accountability or set of standards that can explain away this consistent level of officiating for this period of time. And Mike Dean is a testament to that.
You also know that the most annoying part of that decision is that Mike Dean has spent the last 3 months getting really excited, growing a beard, knowing that he was going to be the topic of conversation at 8:30 on a Sunday night in a Merseyside derby. And everything about the guy just screams. I think he would have claimed the assist for the free kick because that's the level of attention.
Hey, Mark, was that his Tranmere relegation depression beard, or what was that?
Yeah, that was him squeezing us for the 3-0 win. That wasn't enough for him all those years ago. He needed just to clench that little bit more out of us.
By the way, Matt, on that exact point, and we haven't even said his name, I don't think, so far today. And look at me, I'm squashing beefs with all sorts of dudes today. I didn't think about Jordan Pickford for the vast majority of this game, and that's the greatest compliment I can give to a personality like Jordan Pickford, who I thought was solid today, and I didn't think about him, so that's great. Go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
When he had to tip that free kick over the bar, all of the things were happening in my brain that have gone on in the last sort of 18 months.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. I think they didn't severe, and that's great for the defence. In fairness to Jordan, he came out and punched a few really well. He gathered most of the crosses into the box, but it was all very routine for him today. Very last thing, obviously in a normal world, me and you would have been at Goodison Park today watching that Mose. Robbie, we were watching it with a Goodison Park crowd in the background from where you are. I mean, what was your feelings on watching it, how you watched it, and your feelings? I mean, I was just on edge for the entire time. I didn't know whether to sit down or stand up or go and get a drink or not, or whether to jump up when we had a chance. It was all very, very strange. How did you lads find it?
I'm struggling with my own thoughts on whether the Premier League should have restarted, because I think boredom has pushed me to a point that, regardless of what I thought previously, as soon as the football comes back on, there's absolutely no way you're not sitting down and watching it. And I think that is probably the dilemma that a lot of people face. And to this point, I think it's been one that I've been happy to fall into. It's been nice having some form of competitive sport back on. That all very quickly changes when it's something that you are ordinarily so personally invested in. And my experience of watching Newcastle and Sheffield United is very much similar to how it's always been. But the experience of watching Everton in big football matches, in particularly at Goodison Park, which hurts that little bit more, it makes Project Restart feel a little bit sour to me. And as much as I appreciate the reasons why it has to happen, and as much as that will bring about an inevitable sense of disappointment for us as Evertonians, it does have to happen, and the league does have to finish. But it's so alien to see Everton functioning when you are not part of that normal routine that we've always been part of. So it's a very strange one. It's like when you go on holiday and you have to kind of catch up on Everton results, and it feels as though it's not quite happening. And I feel like the last quarter of the season will probably feel like that, and it will feel very, very distant, to a point whereby it doesn't really matter what Everton do to a great extent. Even a European finish, I don't necessarily think that would sink in until we were able to personally see that come into effect. So it's a very strange time for football, but it's one that we're going to have to get used to for the short future.
Today was the first day that I've watched a match without the crowd noise. For whatever reason, it's like I wanted to, for the games that I've watched up to this point, and I'll be totally honest, I have not made it through a full 90 minutes of any of these restart games. I've had to kind of warm back up to it a little bit. But to Mark's point, those games all feel the same, mostly the same. They sound different, but they feel the same in terms of my investment with them. So today, I, for whatever reason, decided I'm going to watch this without the crowd noise, just to try and get a more authentic sense of what it must be like for the players today. And the intensity level, even though I thought obviously the effort was there, I thought both sides, you didn't think any of them were just, again, I wouldn't say that they were being lazy or taking it off, but without a crowd there, there's just not that same fuel poured onto the fire of edginess and of anger. There were a lot more kind of casual summer preseason, laughs and a few back pats, and it just, that part was different. But consequently, there was definitely a discernible feeling that the pressure of being in front of that Goodison crowd, as much as I totally get why everyone would rather be there. I think that this wasn't the worst thing for them today in this circumstance to have their first game back in a scenario like this, only from the standpoint that it took a lot of the kind of normal, weight that they're constantly carrying in this game, and it just took it off a little bit. Again, this is only interesting to me. I'm not saying it's necessarily good, but maybe it was good for this one narrow circumstance so that none of us would want to persist. So I want to throw out all the caveats there. But for me, watching it, it was nice to be invested and feel something on TV related to sports again. I do feel like that there is we've got some quality pieces there. I'm excited to see some young players play, but seeing it without fans is going to take some getting used to for now. But it's something that, given where we are in the season and what we have left to play for, it almost feels like an extended summer training preseason before the season kind of thing, even though it is of consequence. I know that these games are of consequence. I'm just saying that the stakes aren't particularly high for Everton. As Matt pointed out before, those 3 weeks of just Carlo Ancelotti with the squad, I think that there is some value to potentially be mined from this situation. And the lack of a crowd today was just a reminder of how awkward that entire environment and that entire situation actually is.
Rob, you mentioned how this must be for the players. I think we've got one player in particular who absolutely thrives off that match day and that match play experience, and that's Richarlison. And he is someone who tried to intrinsically generate that in the first 20 to 25 minutes. You could see him acting in a way that he'd try and get the crowd behind him.
Even before the game, with those comments you made about Van Dijk, might have been a way of him trying to psych himself up for this because he knew the crowd weren't going to be there.
100%.
Everything about what a Premier League match day in a stadium is, he lives for. And I think you get the best out of Richarlison at times when either his own crowd's on his side, the opposition crowd's on his back. There's some form of sense of occasion that he can thrive on the edge of. And that is the point where he performs best. And I think my concern watching him in the final hour of today's game was that it's potentially going to be quite difficult to channel the best of him in the next few weeks, because he is someone who he loves everything that we love about football as fans. And I think as long as Premier League football resembles that pre-season friendly that Everton had in Austria, where Ronald Koeman was hungover for the whole game, and we played in Vienna's version of Sefton Park, that's going to be really difficult for Richarlison to be at his best at.
I think what I'd say about that is what was encouraging for me was that he found a way into the game later on. You know, at least, like going back to what I said at the very start, I think both of those lads up front, if you're not as strong as man as they are, or you're not as good footballers as they are, or you're not as hard working as they are, you don't get your joy late in the game like those do. Your head goes down. If you're Dominic Calvert-Lewin or Richarlison and you're not that good, your head goes down. You go off the game, you get subbed off. Keane comes on, you forget about it. But both of them went again later on. I think that's encouraging from both of their points of view. So maybe all positives and negatives anyway after that. It's been great.
Absolutely.
Been great being a post-match again, lads. Really enjoyed it. We've gone for 43 minutes, probably the longest one of the season as well. So, making up a borrowed time. We will, of course, be back again after the game against Norwich on Wednesday. All sorts coming up this week. We'll have subscribers weekly on Tuesday. Weekly will be on Thursday this week, so we can reflect on the Norwich game. We'll do a post-match on Wednesday night for the match against Norwich as well. Kickabout is out from last week, Rob. A lot of good chat from that about the derby. Really enjoyed that show.
Thank you. Yeah, and by the way, we actually talked about, I almost thought I was going to have my moment today, but we had an extended discussion about what are we going to feel like when we actually win this game, and to actually put your cynicism aside and try to actually envision it. I thought we were close to having a moment today of discussing that or revisiting that discussion from the podcast. But yeah, good discussion, still a lot of fun, even if you know the result today.
Yeah, and on Blue Room Extra last week we had 11s, which is me and Mark are on that all the time. One of my favourite shows to do. Loads of fun. How would you describe 11s, most to anyone who's not to the uninitiated, I suppose you could say?
It's an eclectic mix of all of the weirdest things that Evertonians have ever thought about.
There you go. Good way of summing it up. Yeah, that's over on Patreon. So it's patreon.com/Blue Room Extra. Loads more content now. The season's back up and running. Best time to subscribe. So if you want to hear a bit more from us, please head over to there. Thanks very much to Mark. Thanks very much to Rob. Thanks very much for listening to this. Cheers for sticking with us through the lockdown. Loads of football coming up. And we'll speak to you again very soon here on the Blue Room.